Hi folks, welcome to the program. We're going to be making lovely homemade junk food today, Cool Ranch Doritos, as well as the chocolate caramel Twix. So watch this video at least twice before attempting any recipes. Okay, so if you got the brown bag that says celebrate, you have a bag that has all the Twix ingredients. And if you have the balloon bag, you have a bag that has all the Dorito ingredients. So let's get started. And go ahead and collect the ingredients you see on the screen. Feel free to pause the video while you do that. Okay, so these are the ingredients you're going to find in your balloon bag for the Cool Ranch Doritos. Our first ingredient is going to be onion. That's the package that doesn't have any label on it that looks just like garlic. And garlic is clearly labeled. And beside that, we're also going to have smoked paprika. And beside the smoked paprika, we have a small container of salt. And then we have our ranch seasoning packet. And last but certainly not least, we have the Mission tortillas. Now, in addition to this, you're going to need to provide your own oil to fry your Cool Ranch Doritos. So, when you decide to make your Cool Ranch Doritos, it's important to keep in mind that you can just read the bag of your Doritos to get the ingredients. And as you read those bags, you're going to see some ingredients you don't want on your chips. And that's perfectly fine. But what we're going to do today is I'm going to give you the amounts you need to add to make the seasoning for your corn chips. Now, have I broke into Frito-Lay's headquarters and stolen their recipe? No, I did this by taste. So I got the basic ingredients and I've shared them with you. And now we're going to put together the basic ratios you need to create the Cool Ranch Dorito flavor. This is going to be an approximation. It's going to be according to your tongue. So as we make this, you may find that you want to add more of one thing or have less of another thing. That's perfectly fine. So the first thing you see is the ranch seasoning. That is going to be our base. So let's go ahead and tear open our ranch seasoning and add it to our bowl. You might have to shake it. Yeah, shake, shake, shake. And then poof the bag. And then drop it in. Now, this is going to be our base. Because again, we're making Cool Ranch Doritos. Now, I'll be honest with you guys. When I make this, I'm going to bring in a little more ranch than what I'm giving you guys. Because I really like the taste of ranch. I have ranch issues. I mean, I really like the taste of ranch a lot. I have a whole bottle of ranch that I keep. So I'm going to be putting a little more ranch flavor. The key point of this is for you to understand that you can make your own chips. Yes, you can make your own cheesy, spicy corn chips. And the basics I'm going to show you right now. How do you mix your flavors? How do you add them to your chips? All of that will be included. Also, those of you who got a bag from me, got a brown paper bag in your bag. That bag is really important because that's how we're going to disseminate this wonderful flavoring that we're making for our corn chips all over the chips evenly. One of the key things I want to emphasize is that you are making this to taste. So if you find that this isn't enough garlic for you or enough salt for you, you can make that change as you see fit. I've given you more than enough when it comes to the actual spices. You have more than you actually need. And that's because I know that people make mistakes. You probably have enough in here to make at least 2 sets of corn chips, because you may taste the first set and go, oh, whoa, that is too strong. There is a margin of error that you can have with this, and that's fine. You are not the Frito-Lay Corporation. You do not have to make them exactly like they make them. You might want to make yours a little saltier, a little less salty. You have that option with these items. So let's go ahead and measure out 1 teaspoon of the onion powder and 1 teaspoon of the garlic powder. It's better to put too little in versus too much. So if you don't have an exact measuring spoon, you only have a teaspoon in your house, go ahead and put a little less in and then pour it in, and we can add a little bit more as you see fit. I'm going to tell you all about this unit of measurement, which is actually going to come into play today, called the pinch. And it doesn't matter which order you put your stuff in. I put my garlic powder in first, and now I'm going to put my onion powder in next. And as you can see, I made a mistake and got some in there. Yep, some of it's spilling over. It's okay. So I put these 2 teaspoons in, a teaspoon of garlic powder and a teaspoon of onion powder to 1 packet of ranch seasoning. Now we're going to stir the ranch, the garlic, and the onion, and we're going to try to make sure it's evenly distributed. Now, since you're just making this for yourself, you're not sharing this with a lot of other people, you're going to taste this to see if this flavor is getting close to what you like. Now, you're looking at your bag and you're going, wait, I have other ingredients. That is correct. But because the ranch seasoning has a salt component of its own, you want to make sure you're not going to oversalt this. So give yourself a little bit of a taste and see, does this need a lot of salt or a little? That ranch does have a lot of salt in it. And I don't trust every packet to be exactly the same, which is why I gave you the salt. And you have the opportunity to just take a pinch, and that's what I'm going to do. Add a little salt to it. I don't think I need that much more salt for this, but because I know corn chips are rather plain, I'm going to put 2 pinches of salt in. Now you may say, how big is a pinch? Literally take your fingers and pinch the salt, and whatever you pull up, that is your pinch. Put that into your ranch mixture, and of course stir it. Don't worry, if you need more salt later, you can always add it. Now we come to the most pungent and powerful spice we're going to use in this mixture. Now this is what gives Cool Ranch Doritos their unique flavor. They don't just use paprika in their Cool Ranch Doritos, they use smoked paprika. I gave you way more than you'll ever need to use. And I want to encourage you to try it on things like roasted chicken and beef and pork in your own home and see how it changes the flavor of your different dishes. But for this, simply take a pinch and add that pinch to your mixture and stir. It's important to taste your food as it goes along. And some of you are going to say, why are you stirring it with a spoon? Shouldn't you be using something else? Nope, spoon's fine. Spoon's fine. Okay, so what I want you to do is taste a little bit of it. You can, I guess this is the proper way to do it. Since we're not going to put anything else, I'm going to put it in my pinching finger. That pinch is just perfect. I don't need any more. But that 1 pinch of smoked paprika, you're going to notice immediately it changes the entire composition of this mixture. And all of a sudden, you can taste the Cool Ranch. Now, if you're like me, you're like, I need more ranch. Go ahead, add more ranch, and just, again, continue playing with the different amounts so you get the flavor you want. But in general, your ratio is 1 packet of ranch seasoning to 1 teaspoon of garlic and 1 teaspoon of onion powder, that's garlic and onion powder, and 1 pinch of smoked paprika, and salt to taste. You don't need a lot of salt if you're getting pre-made ranch powder. It's really that simple to make this seasoning. But let's move on to getting the corn chips made. Okay, it's time for us to start cutting up our tortillas. So open up your bag of tortillas and take out about 3 or 4 tortillas, and we're going to cut them in half, and then we're going to cut them in half again. Breaking them apart a little bit. Apply a little more pressure this time. Okay, so if it looks like the X-Men symbol, you did it right. So go ahead and stack those up. And like I told you, with this, it's a bit of trial and error. At this point, you want to preheat your oven to 325. Okay, so go ahead and cut your tortillas. Keep cutting your tortillas into that lovely little X-Men shape and stack them up. Once you've cut as many tortillas as you think you might want to try this time around, go ahead and grab a baking sheet. Now you're going to put your cut corn tortilla onto a baking sheet. I like to cover my baking sheets with aluminum foil, but what you want to do is make sure they're nicely spaced. Preheat your oven to about 350. And what we're going to do is we're going to put this in the oven for 30 seconds. And then we're going to turn them over, literally flip each one of these, and then put them back in for 20 seconds. This is going to pull some of the moisture out of this. And again, you can pull the whole thing out of the oven, turn them over, put it back in the oven, 20 seconds. Again, we're trying to pull the moisture out of these so that when we fry them, they come up very nice and crispy. While your oven is preheating, go ahead and get your oil in your big pan. Again, get something like a Dutch oven or a deep set pan that you can put the oil of your choosing in there. Now you can choose peanut oil, canola oil, any oil you like. So while we're waiting for your oven to heat up, get a little plate and put it beside the deep set pan and put a paper towel on it because you're going to want your items to have the oil drip off. Don't get it too close to the stove. I haven't lit the stove. That's one of the reasons I'm not too worried, but don't put yours too close to the stove. You don't want to have an oil fire, but definitely get a paper towel and put it on your plate. And then put your oil in your pan, and like I said, in my case, I'm gonna have to melt mine down because I'm using red palm oil, and I'm also using MCT oil because I like the way that fries my food. You pick peanut, canola, whatever oil you like. So you want to add enough oil so that you are covering the bottom of your pan. So you want to cover the bottom of your pan with maybe 1/4 of an inch of oil. Once your oven has heated up to 350, go ahead and take your tray, and again, you can put more on than you want. I'm just putting these 8 on because I know I need to turn them really fast, and I have to turn them fast and get them back into an oven so the oven doesn't get cold. So I'm putting them on here in the oven for 30 seconds at 350, again to drain the water out. But if you want to put more chips on here, you think you can turn them really fast and get them back in that oven for another 20 seconds, that's great. Okay, so pull them out of your oven after 30 seconds. They're not going to look very well cooked, and that's fine. I'm just going to turn them all over. Notice that I'm using some tongs. You can use tongs, you can use forks, you can use anything you want. Turn them over any way you see fit. And once you have put them in for 20 seconds more, go ahead and pull them out. And they may be a little curled, may look a little flaky, that's fine, don't worry about that. You're not eating the most processed food, so it's going to behave normally like regular food. And you can go ahead and put these on that plate you had with the napkin, and I'll put that a little closer into the screenshots here so you can see it. You can put that onto take your chips and put them onto the plate you have with the napkin. Just keep that napkin away from the fire. And once you have them all off your tray, we can start frying them up in the oil. You can actually transfer the last few to the oil if you'd like. And they're coming right out of the oven. It's not going to harm anything. I just know I can't fit all of mine into my particular tray. And I probably should have waited till it was sizzling. Oh, okay. So wait till this is sizzling, then add your chips to the oil. Oh, it's sizzling. Oh, it wasn't that far behind. I thought it was hot enough, you know? All right, so let's let these cook and sizzle for 1 minute. I'm going to do these separate from the others because I'm a little concerned they're not going to come out great. But while this happens, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to refill my tray with more corn tortillas that need to go in for 30 seconds because I want to make myself a bunch of Cool Ranch Doritos. So let your chips fry and keep an eye on them. Turn them after about 30 seconds. You'll feel them get a little harder. When they feel like they're hard and they're not like soft as they were when they came out of the oven. See, they're still a little soft when they come out of the oven. And when you first put them in the fryer, they're a little soft. But when they are no longer really floppy, then you can pull them out and let them rest on the paper. And one of the reasons I'm using the red palm oil is it has great vitamin E and carotenes in it, sure. But it also gives my chips, once they've been fried, a distinct color so I can tell which have been fried, which haven't. And when I put them on my little paper, they're remarkably oranger than when they were before they were put in. So I can tell which of these, can you tell which of these I fried and which I haven't? Yeah, I can tell immediately because it's a different color than the rest. I'm sure if you fry in canola or another color, the frying of the corn itself will change the color of the tortilla. But this is a little more obvious to me, and I like obvious. So once you have cooked as many of the corn chips that you want, and that means you baked them in the oven for 30 seconds on one side at 350, and then turn them over and bake them again for 20 seconds on the other side at 350, and then put them in the fryer and fry them for approximately 1 minute, turning them over and the midway point. You can kind of tell when they've hit their crispiness. Then you're ready to apply the seasoning. So gather up all your chips and we'll begin to season. Once you have fried as many chips as you like, then put them in the brown paper bag. Now go ahead and grab your seasoning, get a spoon, put the seasoning in the bag like so. Just kind of like you want to shake it all over everything in there. Close the bag and this is where putting as much on as you want comes down to your taste. If you want to put more in there, put more in there. I like a very heavy flavored chip. You may not like as much. So after you put 1 or 2 tablespoons, in my case, tablespoons in, and have shaken it up, you can go ahead and taste one of your chips. You can see, I like it, but I want more seasoning. The flavor is so perfect, but it's a little chewy, so maybe you might want to leave your chips in the oven a few seconds more, maybe 30 seconds on both sides. You'll have to test it out yourself. Everybody's oven is slightly different. Again, we're not a commercial oven, but the flavor is really good. And I bet if I let them wait a little bit and totally cool down, they might even be crispier. More seasoning. And guess what? Your chips are going to burn. Don't freak out if your chips burn because you left them in too long. Do your best to keep an eye on them and turn them so that they cook better. I also found out in like batch 3, the longer you keep them in the oven, the less time you want to let them spend in the fryer. So if you, for example, as I try to make mine crispier, leave them in the oven for 2 minutes, when you put them in the fryer, they need a little less time. So I ended up giving these chips like 2 minutes on either side just to really wick all that water out of them. And, well, they definitely cooked. Maybe too well. But I'm sure these will be crispy. Oh boy. Maybe yours will be better. Post pictures and let me see. And so you have finished making your Cool Ranch Doritos. Go ahead and grab one and enjoy. Again, go ahead and pause the video while you gather up these ingredients, or get the ingredients and include it in the bag. Now, if you got the Twix with caramel kit, these are the following items you have in your bag. Corn syrup, light corn syrup. Sweetened condensed milk. Brown sugar, again, light brown sugar. Some salt. Coconut oil. And chocolate chips, milk chocolate chips. Okay, so there's a reason I have a special slide that's labeled 2 sticks of butter. Every part of this recipe is going to require 2 sticks of butter. I strongly recommend you buy a pound of butter or 4 sticks of butter so you can make the shortbread and the caramel. You'll need 2 sticks of butter for the caramel, or you'll get this. And you don't want this. This is what happens when you only have 1 stick and you have to throw another stick in later just to make it caramelize. Don't try to cheap out on the butter. I didn't know what I was doing. I thought I could get away with 1 stick of butter. You need 2. Again, that's 2 sticks of butter for the caramel, and you'll need another stick and a tablespoon for the shortbread. So, ode to joy, the audio for this part of the video was lost, so I'm recording it now. The things that are important about making your shortbread, and again, I am encouraging you to make your own shortbread or buy Lorna Doones for yourself, because I can't handle flour because I have a gluten allergy. I literally can't touch it, so I couldn't provide this part of the recipe for you. So you will need to make the shortbread of your own choosing. I recommend a Lorna Doone so you get that nice cookie crunch. But if you really want a crunchy cookie versus a melt-away cookie, make sure you use granulated sugar. I chose to use powdered sugar because I want to melt away when I bite into my Twix. I don't really want to crunch through a cookie. But again, if you do, use granulated sugar. If you don't, if you want to just put the cookie in your mouth and let it just melt into your tongue, use powdered sugar. And right there, you'll see we have 2 sticks of butter. The first step in making your shortbread, I'm going to just, drop a couple of hints to you guys about making your shortbread since I wasn't able to give you the ingredients. But the first thing you want to do is cream the sugar. Then you want to add your flour. As you can see there is my gluten-free flour. I, again, can't handle flour with gluten in it, but I can handle gluten-free flour, and that's what I'm going to be using in my version of this recipe. Gluten-free items tend to be a little more flaky, so keep that in mind when adding the cornstarch, which we'll get to later. So I mentioned before you need to cream your sugar. That basically means you take all the butter, both sticks, and add it to your sugar, whether it's granulated or powdered, and mix it in until it's completely incorporated. Notice how bright yellow the sugar and butter is. When you've done that, you've known you've gotten all the butter and sugar creamed together. Then you want to sift together your flour and cornstarch. Notice that you're using a scant amount of cornstarch. So use a little bit less, like a few millimeters less of, or actually, maybe even a whole centimeter less of cornstarch after you measure into that cup. So once you put it in to your mixture, you're going to sift it together with your flour. This is very important with gluten-free flours, but it's also important with regular flours. Just kind of scoop it up, stick it in the sifter, the cornstarch and the flour together, and keep sifting it till you can't tell one from the other. In my case, I have the luckiness of having the gluten-free flour being a different color than the cornstarch, so I can really see the difference. But once I've done that, once I have it fully mixed together, then I'm going to slowly add it to the creamed sugar and butter mixture. And I'm going to keep adding it until it completely is absorbed by the butter and sugar. So a little bit at a time, I'm going to add a little bit at a time to the butter sugar mixture so I get the flour molecules and the cornstarch molecules to completely bind with the butter and sugar. Once you've combined your flour cornstarch mixture with your butter sugar mixture, you're going to have a nice dough that you want to wrap in plastic wrap and stick into your refrigerator for approximately 20 minutes. A little more than 20 minutes won't hurt anything. But you want to give a chance for all the ingredients to gel together. So just form it into a ball, wrap it in plastic wrap, stick it in the refrigerator, and when you're done, you're going to roll it out on top of some parchment paper and stick it in your pan. Or you can just flatten it with your fingers inside your pan. The reason I suggest parchment paper is because I think you might want to keep the caramel from sticking to the edges of your pan. It will make it a little easier for you to get your candy bars out at the end. Now, if you decide you don't want to make your own shortbread, just buy a packet of Lorna Doones or whatever your favorite shortbread is, and put that in the bottom of the pan that you're going to choose to make your Twix out of. You can also just line them up and make them individually. We'll show you how to do that later. If you are gluten-free like me, just find some gluten-free shortbread, make your own recipe if you need to. I suggested Lorna Doones because that is a cookie that is the closest in terms of texture and taste to the Twix cookie. But again, you can use any shortbread you like. This is up to you. This is your choice. Or you can use, pre-made shortbread cookies. So now we're going to make our caramel. As you can see here, we have all the ingredients set out ahead of time. The key to making a caramel is the cup. Make sure you have a cup because you're just going to need a cup of all the ingredients. You will need 1 cup of butter, 1 cup of corn syrup, 1 cup of brown sugar, and 1 cup of heavy whipping cream, or you can use a 14-ounce can of sweetened condensed milk. I provided the sweet condensed milk here, but if you want to use heavy whipping cream, you can. Additionally, if you add vanilla, your caramel, I don't want to call it a caramel, I'll tell you why in a second, but your caramel will have more of a Werther's Original kind of flavor to it. Now, the thing is, this is not actually a caramel. Caramels never involve butter. This is actually a butterscotch. And yes, this is the kind of ingredients that are used by Twix. They're using the darker sugar. A caramel can be white or brown sugar, but it never involves butter. The thing about the corn syrup, because I did make a batch of this without corn syrup adds the chewiness, that gooiness you get when you bite into a Twix and the caramel separates a little bit and draws off like mozzarella cheese. That's what the corn syrup does to the caramel. I'm keep calling it caramel because that's what Twix calls it, even though in reality it's a butterscotch. But yeah, if you don't want to use a corn syrup with this, there are other ways you can achieve chewiness, but you'll have to look those up on your own. Okay, let's start mixing our ingredients. Okay, so to make this caramel, the first thing you're going to need to do is remember, I didn't give you a thermometer. You do not have to have a candy thermometer to do this, but if you look, you'll see we have a glass of water. Get a glass of water, put a piece of ice in there so the water stays cold, and that's how we're going to be able to measure our caramel's readiness. So the first thing we want to do is take your first cup, or your only cup, sorry, of brown sugar. And, oh great, now it wants to be all hard. Great. Take your first cup of brown sugar. I must have packed it really tight, huh? And get it out of there. You're going to put your brown sugar into your container. Glad that finally worked out. Grab both sticks of your butter, or 1 stick at a time, and put your butter into your dish. I just like to unravel it and let it fall in. And then, once you've gotten both sticks of butter in, I'm using unsalted butter, so I'm just going to grab a pinch of salt and put it in there. It doesn't need a lot more salt than that. If you use salted butter, then you don't have to worry about adding a pinch of salt at all. That's just plenty of salt right there. In fact, I would almost recommend salted butter, but I really haven't seen much of a difference when it comes to making this. And yes, I've made this a few times now. It's been a couple of times. So put both your sticks of butter in, your brown sugar. I'm going to add another pinch of salt just for good measure. And now we're going to heat this up before we add the rest of our ingredients. So we're just going to let this melt. We're not trying to get it to boil or anything like that. We're going to stir this until it is melted before we then add the corn syrup, and if it gets stuck on there, just give it a little stir. The corn syrup and the condensed milk. So just want to get this all melted down. Now you'll notice my butter, it's already pretty soft. I like to have room temperature butter that's already pre-softened before I add it to the recipe. I do not recommend refrigerator hard butter for this recipe. Room temperature. And once you've gotten it melted, you can then add your condensed milk. And I do recommend, if you think the medium heat looks too high in your stove, everybody's stove is different. Go ahead and grab or just lower your temperature to a low setting. I'm sorry, I might grab your spatula to get the rest of the condensed milk out. But yeah, lower your temperature if you're concerned. It's okay if you melt it at a lower temperature. You're just going to raise it later once you finish adding the condensed milk and the corn syrup so that we can get this to a boil. Because the boil is where the candy magic happens. Yes, candy making was done before candy thermometers. So get all your stuff into this. Make sure you have everything inside. Then you're going to go ahead and stir your ingredients in. And if you're like me, you said, boy, that really was melting and was kind of sugaring a little faster than I like, so I lowered it. I did lower mine. You can readjust yours up to medium again. I use a gas stove. I love gas, cooking on gas, but if you have an electric stove or whatever, just have it down at low to melt that butter and that sugar down, and then add your condensed milk and corn syrup. Again, everything's by the cup, just a cup of everything. And once you've done that, then you can raise it back up to medium because we're going to get this to a boil. Stir your ingredients in. When they seem really well incorporated, you can stop and let's see it boil. And this, kids, is where I made my fatal flaw. I stopped stirring. Please don't stop stirring. If you stop stirring, your sugar will get a chance to burn on the bottom. Stir, stir, stir. Continually stir this concoction for the 7 to 10 minutes it will take for it to take on a golden caramel-like color. Once it takes on this caramel-like color, drip a drop into that cup of water that we have that has a little piece of ice in it. And if it forms a round ball when it hits the water and it's the right color, caramel colored, you have achieved caramel. It's time to pour. But go ahead and rescore your candy bars before you put the caramel on top of it. Just go right back over those lines you cut in before and score it. And now you can just pour your caramel on there. Once you poured all the caramel that you want in there, I don't want the thickest layer of caramel, you can just slide it back and forth until it's covered enough. And then stick it in your refrigerator to solidify until you're ready to put chocolate on it. So if you choose to get Lorna Doones, you can lay them out on a nice cooling rack and put that cooling rack inside of a cookie sheet. See, there's your cookie sheet. And there, let me just hit this out with the little mic. And there is your cooling rack. Put your cookies as close as possible together on the cooling rack. And if you have Lorna Doones that are square, it's going to be much easier for you. Again, I have a gluten allergy, so I had to get Walker's shortbread cookies, and they're round, so I just lined them up as best I can, and now I'm going to put the caramel on them. So if you want to get a ladle out, you can get a ladle out and use that to put the caramel on your shortbread. Okay, I don't think there's any wrong way to put caramel on shortbread. Let's see how it looks. Go ahead and put caramel on all of your shortbread. Once you have put caramel on all of your shortbread, let it cool overnight out of the refrigerator, or you can put it in the refrigerator as well. Again, hopefully you don't have all these burnt pieces like I did, because I rushed. Hopefully you didn't rush. But don't worry about it. It's just burnt sugar. It won't taste bad. It'll just taste like burnt sugar. You're not a commercial kitchen. You're allowed to make mistakes. I've noticed that with this particular recipe, even if I use the shortbread, I end up having a lot more caramel. But if I do, the pre-made shortbread, the Lorna Doones, I end up having a lot more caramel left over. But if I do the regular shortbread, even then I have caramel left over. So if you have any cool like molds around the house that you just like having, you can always just take that extra caramel and pour it into those molds and freeze them. And that caramel's good for making everything from caramel apples to everything else. I mean, heck, you're a confectioner. You can use that caramel any way you see fit. You can make caramel cakes, caramel icing, all kinds of stuff. You can make caramel now. So go ahead and freeze it and save it for another day. Making the chocolate is really simple. You can either cook it on the stovetop or the microwave. I am deaf to all chocolate on the microwave. So I will be putting my 2 cups of chocolate in this pan here and cooking it slowly on the stovetop. Once you get your chocolate in, then you can add your coconut. I believe a tablespoon of coconut will be enough. Now that you have your chocolate in your pan or in your microwavable dish, if you choose to microwave it, you can do so at 45 seconds at 60%. You'll have to nuke it at 45 seconds with 60% power. Stir it, put it back in again until it's drippy. Now, I myself never found any kind of drippiness when I did that. I always overdid it and it ended up burning. But I think that you might be able to do it. But I'm going to use a stovetop and slowly melt it down. Please note how low my fire is. I am really taking this slow and slowly going to let this melt little by little, inch by inch, until it's a nice, creamy, dreamy bunch of chocolate. Now, some of the recipes I looked at said you don't have to use the coconut oil. They just said get some milk chocolate chips and melt it down. Or just melt down milk chocolate, period. So if you have some Hershey bars, apparently you can just melt that down too. But I think that the coconut oil gives you a little more leeway in terms of not burning it. So try to use all the coconut oil that I gave you in that pack, and if you aren't sure how much that is, get 2 teaspoons or 1 tablespoon of coconut oil and add it to your chocolate. Note that this chocolate is melting as I speak, so low and slow can work. You don't have to go fast with the microwave. You can take your time. I mean, you're making candy. Why are you rushing? Take your time. Enjoy it. Once your chocolate has reached a nice drippy consistency like so, it is time for you to start enrobing your chocolate around your Twix. Grab a cookie sheet or a baking sheet. I always call them cookie sheets. And if you have any kind of like grid or any kind of cooling rack, you can put that down here. Now, if you don't have a cooling rack or any kind of grid, I recommend you just pour that chocolate right on top of the caramel you poured on top of the cookie and cut it. It'll just look like this with another layer of chocolate on top. Not the end of the world. But if you do have a nice drying rack, you can use that to allow your chocolate to drip through after you have made your Twix. So just set all your cookie bars out on the tray and then bring the chocolate over to drip on top of it. Now we're going to go ahead and enrobe the candy and give it a final stir in chocolate. Just kind of gently pass over the top of it. Now, if we were the Twix company, we would have a chocolate waterfall that would come down over these and cover these in a drizzle of chocolate. And I don't really feel like wiping up a lot of chocolate, but if you want to try to create a chocolate waterfall for your chocolate bars to be in, you do that. If you want to clean up all that chocolate underneath it, notice how I'm laying it on heavier. Once you have them enrobed in enough chocolate that you feel comfortable with, I think that's plenty. This first one is plenty of chocolate. The second one is doing just fine. Let them dry. You might want to move them if they have chocolate underneath them, like that second one, so that they don't stick to the grid here. But let them dry, and then like you let these rest, the caramel and shortbread rest overnight, you can let these rest overnight as well, and you can have them the next day. It's not a fast dish, but if you want to make your own food, or if you're on a restricted diet like me and you can't just go out and get a pack of Twix, it's kind of worth it to be able to know how to make your own. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. If you're not sure about any of the instructions I've given, feel free to contact me. I'll be happy to try to help you, but I'm learning along with you. And hopefully you found this to be a fun time. If you have a butter knife, you can use that to smooth the chocolate down and around your Twix. But this chocolate is so thick, you might be overwhelming the caramel and cookie that you are enrobing it in. So if you want to just do one layer, like this one here, just to the top, that's fine. You don't have to totally engulf it in chocolate, or you can. If you want to engulf it in chocolate, do that too. You can do it with a nice big old chocolate bar. It's absolutely okay. We are making candy, so that makes sense. Okay, well, keep covering your bars in chocolate. Again, use a butter knife to get it. Sometimes the cookie may crumble. I'm again using a gluten-free flour. They're a little more crumbly. That's going to happen. If you don't feel like enrobing your bars in chocolate, or if you decide that you just want to use the rack the same way you did with the Lorna Doones or the shortbread that you had bought from the store, where you pour the caramel on top, you can also pour the chocolate on top just like you did pour the caramel on top. But if you don't feel like enrobing your individual bars in chocolate, you can just make like a layered bar by taking, instead of cutting your caramel bars out, you can just take your chocolate sauce once you've got it melted and pour it directly on top of the caramel after it's cooled. And again, make sure caramel is cooled first, and then you can just put your chocolate on top and then spread it out to the thickness desired. And this will give you a layer bar, so it won't have the look of a Twix, but it will have all the tastes of a Twix. And just spread that out evenly. And the next morning, once everything has cooled off, you can just start cutting your bars. Now this will give you, again, the taste of Twix without you having to enrobe it in chocolate. And you'll have basically a candy bar. You've got your cookie, you've got your, you can tell from the way it cuts, it's definitely got the gooiness of the caramel. Got your cookie, your caramel, and your chocolate. If you want to put more chocolate on, feel free to. I decided I wanted less chocolate, more caramel, more cookie. You can put as much in as you see fit. So in the end, I really like the caramel bars more than anything else. And I like the Twix too. And I made them, but really, I'm a caramel girl. I'm not a big chocolate girl. So I did finish this and I did learn a lot. The most important thing I feel like I learned is that you must stir, stir, stir. If you're making this, you must stir the chocolate, you must stir the caramel, you must keep it low and do it slow. If you try to rush, you will end up with horrible bits. What you're looking at right now is what I worked on and created first, where I really took my time. You can see the layers are lovely and defined, and these are what I made the final products with, these lovely chocolate Twix. Full disclosure, I use semi-sweet chocolate when I did my enrobing. Milk chocolate, I just don't like the way it tastes. I preferred semi-sweet chocolate. But all in all, it was a fun time. If you have any questions, again, just email me at teen@mcmillanlibrary.org and I'll be happy to help you. Goodbye, folks. Have a great day. Thanks for joining us.